Welcome to the session on trauma and the Dharma healing and transformation, session 2. We're going to continue to explore body awareness and in particular the somatic experiencing practices of Peter Levine, and I'll be playing some video clips of Peter as he talks about somatic experiencing. The meditation that you just did is, as I said, based on Reggie Ray's work, which is more of a Tibetan Tantric Buddhism practices, where we're really connecting with this energy flow that exists from along our spine, from the top of our head down to the base of our spine. So I hope that you found that helpful. It's a interesting practice for our grounding awareness, so that there's this flow is available as in order to contain sort of difficult, not contain, to be with as best we can difficult emotions that may arise. And I'll talk more about that next week when we'll be talking about relating to difficult emotions and triggers. I'm going to start by reading a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. You've maybe heard this before, Letters to a Young Poet. So it's one of my favorites, and I haven't read it in years and years. I used to always read this, and it just came to mind after doing that practice. Be patient towards all that is unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. I'll read it again. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. So that's pointing towards being patient with what's arising in our heart space. And I always find it amazing in this practice, where if we, just by bringing awareness to the heart space, how things kind of well up. I'll find myself with tears flowing down my face, or shaking in some way, just because there's emotions that are releasing, energy being released really from the body. And I don't really try to figure out what it is. I just notice that that's what's happening. I'm not really seeking the answers to it, but just allowing that energy to just to be and to be released. So somatic, I'm going to start right into somatic experiencing. I was going to start with, talking about more kind of the Four Noble Truths, or the Four Foundations of Mindfulness and the body awareness and why it's important, but I don't want to rush at the end going over the somatic experiencing. So I'm going to do it backwards a little bit. I'm going to talk about it, and then maybe talk about the reasons why it's useful to explore within our meditation practice later. So Peter Levine, quite well known in this area, really invented this way of dealing with trauma, said, trauma is perhaps the most avoided, ignored, belittled, denied, misunderstood, and untreated cause of human suffering. And he really brings that forth in the way that he offers this teaching. And yet he also brings it with a spiritual element as well, with the way that he offers somatic experiencing. So I've heard him say, excuse me, I've heard him say in different forms that trauma work is a very necessary part of any spiritual practice. So you could say that trauma work is a very necessary part of mindfulness practice or Dharma practice. Because at its very core, trauma brings with it a desire for not wanting to be in the present moment. Not wanting to be perhaps especially present with what's arising in the body. In fact, people coming to meditation with trauma can spend a lot of time in meditation disassociating from the present moment and from their bodies. In fact, I think many people are attracted to meditation perhaps because of trauma. It can be a way of relating to their trauma in a different way. So central to this practice is, being aware of trauma so that we can work with it. And it can really be a gift that helps us work with the light and the dark. We can begin to be with those polarities and see the non-duality, to see the non-duality of it. And so somatic experiencing is very much a part of this. So somatic experiencing so the word somatic refers to internal perception, the internal perception and experiencing of the soma, or the body. So it's just seeing the body from within. And I think I've said this before, so we're not kind of looking at the body as from the outside, or if we say, bring your awareness into the lower belly. It's not kind of like we're looking at the lower belly. It's that we're within the lower belly, sensing the space that's present there. And the way Peter Levine teaches it, it's somatic experiencing is very much about helping people to access and address the trauma that lingers in the body, allowing people to work through the emotional symptoms and including feelings like anger, guilt, or shame. So it's the notion that trauma is very much stored in our body. There's a book, Basil van der Kolk, I think his name, something like his first name is Basil. The title of the book is The Body Keeps Score. And he's a very respected trauma researcher, and he talks about how trauma gets, he's very scientifically looking at how trauma gets stored in the body. So this somatic experience is about releasing that pent-up energy. So it focuses on really restoring kind of self-regulation, you could say, by releasing pent-up survival energy that's been stored in the body. And it, so it's releasing energy that's trapped within the autonomic nervous system, you could say, and using the body's innate abilities to do that and to heal. And the way Levine came to this is he found that animals in the wild experience life-threatening events, and yet they're not traumatized by these experiences. And he determined that what happens with humans is humans often interrupt the natural sequencing of processing this kind of threat response, whereas animals don't. So you might see an animal that's been threatened, the threat response, fight or flight is initiated, but then it just flows through them. Some animals may shake a lot, and they're basically releasing all that energy, and then once it's flowed right through, they just kind of go on. Whereas humans, in many cases, block that release. So it builds up and is stored in the nervous system. So he says that we experience the same sympathetic nervous system response to a threat that animals do, but we don't expend the resulting energy. Perhaps because we're afraid to or ashamed of the physical sensations of the trembling or the shaking or whatever it might be, which are natural ways to expend the energy, but we don't allow it to discharge. We don't allow it to fully discharge and then reset to baseline. We carry it around in our bodies. So this kind of, Dharma practice in general, meditation in general, and this kind of somatic experiencing, which is very much a body meditation practice, has the potential to exactly do these things, to release the trauma from our bodies. I'm going to play this clip from Peter, let him explain it some more. I'm going to share the screen. Okay, let's see how this works.
I think one of the things that's most frightening about this.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. This is your brother Omar Suleiman, here to speak to you about your brother.
This epidemic is that it's coming from something that we can't see. We know that it's somehow around us, but we're unable to localize it. The nervous system was designed evolutionarily to respond to threat that we can see, and to respond either by fleeing or by fighting, the fight or flight response. When it's something that we can't see and we can't localize, we actually go into a third defensive reaction of the nervous system, which is basically to shut down. And this is especially true because we have the lockout where people can't leave their homes, and so they feel more and more trapped. Now, fortunately, there are things that we can do to not be paralyzed by the fear, to be able to not be complacent, of course, but to not live in fear and in panic. And before explaining how this works, I'm just going to demonstrate an exercise that I've designed to help us come back into life, to engage our vitality. And what we do is take an easy full breath. I'll demonstrate it. And on the exhalation, I make the sound woo, vibrating it as though it's coming from my belly, actually vibrating it into my belly, and letting the sound and the breath go all the way out, and then just allow the next breath to come in, filling first belly and then chest, and again repeat. And I just wait for the breath to come in. And maybe just one more time. Then just rest and notice any of your sensations, feelings, thoughts, or images that come into your mind's eye. Just noticing them without judgment. Just, oh, okay, this is what I'm experiencing right now.
So throughout this world.
So. Hey, where'd everybody go?
Within our communities and our families.
Okay. There you are. Okay. Okay. So that's Peter Levine's kind of description. It was actually, we missed the beginning part there. He mentioned the effects of living through this pandemic. And that was what he was offering, is a threat that we can't see. He was offering that practice as a way to something to do to use to relate to that that threat of the pandemic. So these the four foundations of mindfulness, the body aware, the first foundation of body awareness is inviting us to work in that kind of bottom-up way as well, working from the base of bodily experience, and then as we're doing that, noticing what thoughts, fixed beliefs about ourselves or others that arise, to notice them, and as he said, non-judgmentally. So it connects very much to the way the Buddha spoke about the first foundation of mindfulness. And the Buddha would add, bringing the aspect of compassion and self-compassion to the practice as well. So, as I said, trauma, people living with trauma tend to disconnect from the body, tend to disconnect by in one way is by numbing bodily experience, by becoming overly cognitive. So, being more and more in the mind, and kind of spinning in that discursive thought patterns. So this is, as I said, with trauma, the sympathetic branch of the nervous system gets activated as a survival response, but it's not calmed, and it's not discharged. So it doesn't get a chance to regulate back down again. And we're in a kind of a sense of heightened state of high arousal or hyper alertness. And this, irritability can arise, anxiety can arise with this. And the discharge emotion, undischarged emotion, stays bound up in the system. And this can make it difficult for us to engage in the kind of open awareness meditations that I have been offering. In some cases, it's more helpful to go to a body-based meditation. When the Buddha presented the four foundations of mindfulness, the first foundation was body, and I don't think that was by accident. The first one's body. The second one is how we relate to what arises, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So the second foundation is feeling tone, or Vedana. The third foundation is mental formations, thoughts and emotions. So I think that sequence is, purposeful in many ways. So really coming to the body can be a very core part of our practice, particularly if there's unresolved trauma in our past, traumatic memories. And many of us with trauma don't know, particularly if it's very, very early childhood trauma. It's just things keep coming up, and we're not sure. We don't necessarily need to know. That can be a question unanswered. In many ways, it's a process of releasing that energy. So I'm going to try this again, play a different piece. So bear with me while I set it up. Okay, might not be the exact location. Okay, share screen.
As well as my two colleagues.
Sometimes the sensations can be a little bit
Can
scary
people
at
see that
first
okay?
because we're experiencing something that we've cut off from. So another exercise that I find really helpful is what I call the hug exercise. And you can do that anytime. It's good to do it, I think, after the VU exercise, which you just participated in. And so here's what we do. We take our right hand and put it here by our side of our ribs, by our heart, and take our left hand and put the left hand here on the right shoulder. And just to imagine that you're helping yourself hold what you feel, that you're able to contain the sensations and feelings so that they're less frightening, less overwhelming for sure. And you can do this for a few moments. And then if you want, you can go back to the VU exercise. So I'm just going to actually leave my hands here, my arms here, and I'll do it one more time. Now, again, initially the sensations might seem a little bit frightening. And again, that's natural, it's normal because we haven't felt these sensations perhaps for a while. And I have a little prop here to demonstrate this. This is called a Hoberman sphere, and you can get them on Amazon. So when we experience fear and shutdown, we go into a state of contraction. So we're not in a full state of contraction here, but we are in a state of contraction. Now, when we first start to experience the sensations in our bodies, it may actually feel worse for a little bit, but then as we're able to just notice the sensations and how they change with time, what happens now, what happens next, we'll notice that it may feel a little bit worse, but then there's an expansion, and then another contraction, and another expansion, and another contraction, and another expansion, each time expanding more and more. And that's what we need to be able to do, to expand our inner self enough to contradict the feelings of overwhelming helplessness which this unknown threat provides to us.
One of the things that can happen.
Okay. So he's still referring again to the COVID pandemic there, and how to relate to the fear that's arising from that. I kind of look at this as a time of collective trauma, or at least collective anxiety for many people in the world. Oh, I'm going to play one more clip, short one. I'll fast forward it. There's a lot of talking in between where he offers his practices. Okay, bring it up again.
Of course, singing, moving.
If you're looking for a CRM, get Monday.com's flexible CRM solution that can manage
Dancing, participating in family tasks, for example, cooking together, children learning how to make recipes and how to cook food. Of course, where that's safe, where the children aren't likely to harm themselves. And again, those are things that kids love to do. I imagine you're already doing a number of these things with your kids. So these are just some additional suggestions that I found to be very helpful in addressing children's fears and hopes, and to help them restore bounce back their resilience, to help them return to confidence, joy, and resilience.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. This is your brother Omar Suleiman, here to speak to you about your...
It's a unique
Okay.
circumstance, having a threat in the outside that we can't see.
Okay, I'm gonna drag that away. Okay. So part of this practice, I think, is knowing sort of where you're at in the moment. To kind of know what's appropriate as a practice. He offers a lot of different practices, and if you notice how you feel in the moment, you notice kind of the mood of the mind, how your breathing is, where your tensions and your energies are. Noticing anything that's there, you can kind of know through experience what's an appropriate practice for you in that moment. So if in the morning, for example, if I wake up and the mood of the mind is fairly relaxed and not scattered, more calm, then I'll do more of a deeper kind of meditation, like the one we just did, where I'm sensing into the heart space and the energy flow. If I'm feeling kind of agitated or anxious in some way, I'll maybe just do a grounding meditation like we did last week, where I'm simply breathing into the lower belly and feeling my feet, breathing out through the nostrils, breathing into the lower belly and feeling my feet, and feeling the groundedness, breathing out through the nostrils, which is a very grounding. By the way, I put that last week's meditation on the website if you'd I just did it today, but I'll try and get this one up quicker. There's two quite different practices that you can engage in depending on sort of what your feeling and your mood of the mind is in this moment. Other grounding practices he recommends, and we can try to do this. You have to stand up for this one. It's called a heel drop. So basically what you do, you begin by standing. I'll let you stand there. And you basically let your eyes kind of defocus, so you're not really looking at anything. Now slowly raise up onto your toes and let yourself drop back onto your heels. And just keep doing this at a slow rhythm, raising onto your toes, dropping back onto your heels, imagining that your entire weight drops down all at once through your heels. You can let it make a loud thud noise. And bringing your attention to the effect this has on your hips and your lower back. Maybe it feels like there's a jolt that's loosening the hips and lower back. And you just kind of just do this for a period of time. Peter recommends a minute. And I find that jolt, you just kind of feel everything just kind of loosen up. And then after doing that, he recommends a short pause, get yourself back into the standing position. And then you use your knees to create kind of a gentle bounce in your legs, letting your knees slightly bend and then pushing backwards again as they're straight, kind of creating a soft shaking motion in your legs. Imagining that this can gently rock you through your whole body, your hips, up to your shoulders, and even your neck. You try to relax around your jaw and your lower back and your tailbone, as if the base of your spine is really heavy. And you just kind of shake around. I know it kind of looks silly, especially if you're all doing it on Zoom, but it's just shaking. It's just releasing energy. And then another one is this wave breathing. Again, standing still. Your hands just come to rest on your thighs. You start noticing your breath. Now, as you inhale slowly, reach your attention forward, glide your hips backwards, kind of lean your upper body forward as you inhale, creating kind of an arc in your back. Pause for a moment. Then as you exhale, slowly let your head come back, your tailbone gently under your shoulders. You've got to come back to an upright position. So you breathe in, your head forward, kind of arch. Breathe out, back to kind of a balanced standing position. This is a lovely way to kind of mobilize your spine. And as you move, you can pay attention to the movement in your spine and how you feel the weight in your heels change. So you're really bringing awareness to your spine and to your heels as you do this. And then another one that he recommends is bamboo swaying. Come back to standing. Just allow yourself to gently sway like a bamboo tree in the wind. Again, rocking and moving to kind of release built up tension. Might even notice some tremors in the shoulders as you do this. It's another way of releasing tension. You've probably never done that in a meditation group before, but for those of us who've worked through trauma or working through trauma, it's these kinds of body movement meditations that have shaking involved and swaying can be very, very helpful. And really, especially after if you're meditating and you find, especially that meditation we did in the heart space and the body shakes, which is quite common. It's the body wanting to release energy that's being touched. After, if that's as far as you want to go, standing up and shaking and doing one of those body movement practices can be very, very helpful. And they're not often considered part of meditation, but I think they could be. The head forward one is very much like a cat-cow posture in yoga. I don't know if you're familiar with the cat-cow posture, but if you're working with trauma, that's the one yoga asana that I would recommend, is doing the cat-cow and just feeling that's the movement of the spine as you go up and down. I can't really demonstrate it because you won't see me on the floor. You basically get on all fours and raise your back up to the upward, and then your belly down to the ground. If you're interested, let me know and I can send you a video or a diagram of it. So all these help release built up tension that's building up, and it's comes out of that energetic channel that we were practicing with, that goes from the base of the spine to the top of the head. So I'd be curious to ask folks how. I know I might have been easier to remember right after, but what came up for folks, or how did they find that meditation that we did earlier at the beginning, or any of those, the VU practice, if you practiced along with Peter, or any of those heel drop, shaking, wave breathing, or bamboo swaying, if you, how you found them, or if you've been doing them already, and if you found them helpful, or how you've found them useful or not.
I found.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Just briefly, the VE exercise that Peter was doing reminds me of the chant that when I do yoga class, we open and close our yoga session with 3 ohms. And it was kind of that same feeling. The vibration is there's something very visceral and yeah, kind of, I don't know if the word is soothing, but that's an interesting thing to explore, and that's an interesting sensation, and there's a good feeling there. So I think I found that good.
Yeah, all the different sounds. The Tibetans do a lot of chanting before they meditate, and any Tibetan retreats where you do, I always find that the resonance of that chanting really affects how the meditation feels. Actually, even in Tibetan, or places where there's Tibetan monasteries, I would just kind of wander in if they were chanting and sit down and chant away with them, and then meditate. Yeah, and in yoga, there's a sound for every chakra that centers on the chakra, and you can actually, you can find that information. And if you're feeling closed in your voice, or your crown chakra, or your heart chakra, or your hara, the very lowest chakra, you can use sounds to open that. That's all a part of yoga practice, and tantric Buddhism as well. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the somatic practice during the meditation. I found it very much helped me focus and stay with it. And there was also a very, free and expansive feeling, to that type of meditation. I hadn't done it before, and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I will definitely do that again. So thanks for introducing me to that.
I also found, and I have done this a bit, the VU practice, everything with sounds. And someone last week mentioned the Brahmari breathing in yoga. I found very powerful. And I've done a little bit of Kundalini yoga where they do work with gongs, and the gong might go on for about 20 minutes, and you just feel waves of sound. And the sort of the resonance of the sound I find very soothing, but it seems to actually be getting really deep into the body and into my psyche. So I found that really powerful. And Peter Levine's exercise with the hug, it's something I had done before, but I find it immensely comforting. So those are two things I've found really powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, the hug is another one I mentioned. You know, if you're doing that practice and the body starts to shake, you can, you know, do one of the grounding practices that involve movement. Sometimes when you do the heart, you know, bring your attention to the heart center with the once you've connected, the key is to connect with that energy channel before you bring your awareness to the heart center. So all the stuff I did up until, I mean, it's a build up to how you're with what's in the heart space. And it's, you're with it with that energy channel. You've sensed into that first. And sometimes just, you know, tears and emotion flow. And that can be a good time to do the kind of self, the hug to help you just maybe stay with it as a practice. Be very effective. And even if there's, I bring this up in relation to trauma, but this is appropriate for anybody that's feeling deep emotions that are arising during their practice. How do we bring self-compassion to it? That's one way that we can bring self-compassion to it. And it's next week we'll be doing emotions, and the week after or in a subsequent week we'll be looking at self-compassion practices as well. Yeah. Are there any any questions or other comments about what we've covered today? When people see the the benefits or the reasons why we practice body awareness, why it's the first foundation of mindfulness, and why we might practice body awareness for trauma.
So I actually found the exercises quite helpful in being able to connect with my body, and think that that's going to be helpful to do before I meditate, because I often find when I am meditating on my body that energy comes up, and then I'm trying to meditate it through. And so I think at that point, it would probably be good for me to just get up and just release some of that energy before then trying to become aware of my body. There seems to be this kind of hustle back and forth with regards to too much energy when I'm trying to meditate. So yeah, certainly lots to think about. And I really appreciate you bringing those exercises out, because I haven't come across those before. And I really like the meditation before the talk as well. So thank you.
I'll try and get it online quicker this time, so you can. It's why I did it every morning. So I kind of select a meditation like tomorrow. I'll do next week's, and then I practice it all week, so that I get a real feel for it. And it's powerful to do. Some mornings the mind's just all over the place, and I just go back to the breathing into my belly and my feet, and but for the days where I can actually sense into that energy channel, it's a very powerful meditation. Really sort of unearths layers of energy that's built up in the body. It had both shaking and tears, so it's just kind of all parts of the and everything in between, all parts of the spectrum. Yeah, and feeling very grounded during the day as well after practicing it. Found too, if I could kind of connect to that lower belly region during the day, I found I was starting to spin in my mind. I could kind of just reconnect because I'd connected with it in the morning. So it was easier to reconnect during the day. Found that as well. Yeah, so that was my experience with it. But so I'll try and get it up, and then you can play with it for the week and see what happens. It doesn't even have to be for a long time. It can be a 30-minute practice. I think that's all what it ended up being was 30 minutes that was recorded. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've been listening to recorded teachings a fair amount and really enjoying that, podcasts and things like that. And but I had this upsetting thing happen, and I was feeling a lot of fear, and suddenly I just felt like my head was going to explode. Like there was just so much cognitive stuff, so many concepts, and I felt like I just couldn't turn to the Dharma in a way, in that way, like, to read something or to hear another teaching. And but to be able to do something physical was just this amazing balance against that. And it was very helpful, particularly with the anxiety. It was really great. So thanks for I haven't tried those other techniques either, so I'll try those for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, what do people find helpful when they have that sense of their head's going to explode? There's just so much in there, and it can actually have that physical sense, right? Like this pressure that's built up. What kind of practices do people do when they're in that? When that's the state of being in that moment? I'd be curious. Yeah.
I start to move. I found that if I just even go for a walk and just move. I've done it with yoga, but whereas before I used to stay still, and it would just exacerbate it.
That can help dissipate the energy through physical activity. Yeah. Yeah, I have a good friend who's a swimmer, and they closed the pools, of course, and he would swim, I forget how many kilometers, like 4 kilometers every time he went into the pool. And he when they closed the pools, he couldn't do that anymore. And he's going, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is how I dissipate the anxiety and built up energy. And so he's found another way, but it took him a bit of time. So that was his way as well of relating to that. Any others?
Generally, I move to focusing on my breath. I mean, sometimes I will just sit and very consciously breathe very slowly and just follow the breath. But in addition, sometimes I find it helps to move very slowly, and it can be just any kind of movement. It can just be arms out to the side to a count of 3 and then back in. But the breath combined with slow body movement, I find to be very helpful personally.
And of course, there's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to say, I used to run, and that was very helpful, but I don't do that anymore. But I will walk, and I find fast movement helps me. And also, if I'm really upset and a lot of thoughts are going through my brain, I find music helps too. I like to listen to Bach, and that just changes my headspace. So that music has been very helpful as well.
Yeah. It's a very good one.
One thing that I found helpful, I don't know if this is what it's called, I think it's progressive muscle relaxation, where you like tense up all your muscles really tightly and then release them and do it a few times. Particularly, I find doing it with my fists really helpful. If I'm not in a situation where I can necessarily go out for a walk or like get movement. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I try to do walking meditation, reciting the loving kindness meditation. That is the one that helps me a great deal when I'm in that space, especially loving kindness for myself, because that's what I need at that moment. I don't need any more craziness in my head. I need to calm down, and the loving kindness meditation does that for me. Thank you.
Nice.
I find for myself to connect with nature and to be totally distracted from worries, and to see people as well, having the energy around me with the birds, with the trees, and to see children play or people walking their dogs. That I do that every day. I have a walk regardless of the weather or how I feel. And then today I found too with the making sounds to release. That's difficult for me, I find, because I'm almost afraid of making noise because of my trauma and things. So I think that's going to take some practice.
so much wisdom in the group. Yeah, those are all helpful, and and new things. If you haven't heard some of those ways to try different things as well. Everything from dissipating the energy to feeling into the energy by contracting the body, by progressive relaxation, tensing body part and letting it relax, so you kind of feel the release, to connecting with people, with nature, with love, sense of loving kindness. So, I mean, there's many ways, everything from distracting ourselves from it in healthy ways, all the way up to engaging with it in some way, right? There's a whole continuum there of different ways, and none of them are wrong or right. The Buddha would say, of course, to, if possible, if it feels like the skillful thing to do in the moment, to feel into it would be the default, as opposed to distracting or transforming. The energy, his default would be to sense into it. So if you felt like your head was exploding and was just so much going on, to actually feel into right into the skull, into your jaw, your neck, into that whole area, the eyes, the tongue, the mouth. Just sense right into deeply feel into it. And that would be the introception that Peter Levine is talking about as well, feeling it from within. So, but that, of course, that may not be your default for a while, right? It's whatever you feel is skillful in the moment. Yeah, and perhaps once you've sensed into it, something arises that the next skillful thing is to dissipate it, right? Because it's overwhelming in that moment. That's fine too, right? You've taken a step, dipped your toe kind of into it, and then felt it, and then moved on to something else. Sensing into the body is so helpful because it's concrete, right? It's not. We often get lost in the layers of concepts, and the body is just so concrete that we can really feel into it and feel alive as well, as sentient beings. What's it like to feel alive as a sentient being in a body? Yeah. Anything else come up for folks? I would say doing this from a place with a trauma history, to take a gentle and light approach to the practice. People with trauma tend to have a tendency to push themselves, to perhaps be a little overzealous with practices like this. So if you notice any tendency to practice for hours or override your body's signals of pain, then just stop and relax and do something different. Because people with trauma tend to have learned to kind of push through and persevere, and that seems to be what's worked in the past. So these patterns, they develop. So we have to kind of relearn that our internal intuition and signals are trustworthy and can be helpful. So, we can practice shorter practices. We can do practices that we find soothing and relaxing. We can do practices where we notice self-critical thoughts, and let them go. We can practices that involve exercise, practices that are more focused towards loving kindness and equanimity as opposed to effort and progress. We're kind of letting go of a sense of progress. So, as I think I said last week, even though the Buddha was kind of taught a warrior-like stance towards practice and, just drive and practice like your hair's on fire, people working with trauma should probably put that aside and practice in a gentler, lighter way in their practice. Yeah. So I will end it there. Two kind of announcement things. One is